Hello and welcome. My name is Carol Carter. I am the founder and CEO of Global Minded, and we're delighted to have you here with us today for our session, Black History Month, Relevance, Reality, and Celebration. We have some incredible leaders from the state where Global Minded is located, which is in Colorado, and many of you join us every month for Dr. Ryan Ross in his session. And I want to take a little bit of just extra time today to really call out Dr. Ross and his achievements and his leadership within the Global Minded community in honor of Black History Month, but also just to recognize that he's a tremendous leader in our community who we really appreciate. So Dr. Ryan Ross is an Aspen Fellow. He is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Equity, and Inclusion at the Colorado Community College System. He's President and CEO of the Urban Leadership Foundation of Colorado. And as an educator, a speaker, and an actualization coach, Ryan is committed to access, equity, and the development of leaders for his professional and community contributions, and has been recognized as Denver's role model for inclusivity. His passion for community leadership and education is directly related to his experiences growing up and his desire to pay it forward to the community that had afforded him so many opportunities. His innovative work can be witnessed through his leadership programs, such as Kappa League Leadership Development Program, the Urban Male Initiative, the Urban Leadership Foundation of Colorado, and in collaboration with many community partners such as Denver Public Schools, RISE 5280, and the Center for Multicultural Excellence Centers at the University of Denver and Colorado State University, among others. So we're delighted to have Ryan lead these sessions, and he has brought us the most interesting and innovative people over the last year and a half that we've been doing this. And I want to share with all of you that June 22, 23, 24, we will be live, and you can meet Ryan in person. A lot of other leaders are coming from our partners, the PhD Project, and several other groups, NROC and APLU and other folks within the higher ed and the K-12 space. So we look forward to seeing you in Denver. We'll provide some more information before the end of the session on that. So welcome, and Ryan, turning it over to you. Thanks so much for being here. All of Ryan's guests as well. Welcome.
Great, thank you, Carol. And we're going to jump right in because, as you know, we only have about an hour, and I've got people who I could talk to individually for 3 hours with. And so we're going to jump right in. We're going to do got a quick statement. Our guests are going to introduce themselves, and we're going to jump right in. And so this being Black History Month, I think it's really important to address the elephant in the room, at least from my perspective, right? I feel like we get 44 days when we start from Dr. King's birthday through February 28th, where it's really a celebration. Everybody comes together. All of a sudden, there's equity. You look at a Super Bowl where it looks like the NFL's an anti-racist organization, and then you wake up the next day to lawsuits and recognize that, you know, the organization is made up of over 70% African Americans, but has never had an owner of color. You know, we look at, we celebrate the dream, but it's hard to celebrate the dream when every day you turn on the news and you see that the very narrative of African American people are is being censored, whether it's through attack on critical race theory, whether it's an attack on the LGBTQIA community, whether it's attack on, whether allyship can be talked about in the classroom. It's absolutely insane. I think it's something that we have to call attention to. And I think the best way to do that is really getting back to the narrative. And so normally we have guests from all over the country, but today we have 3 fantastic people from Colorado, because what we're doing in Colorado, these 3 leaders, they're affecting the nationwide, right? We have one of the largest MLK celebrations in Moraine in the country, which is run by Vern L, who'll introduce himself. We have a principal who has championed Black history and the history of people of color and indigenous people in her school. And that conversation under her leadership and with her students has gone national, right? And then we have the president of the NAACP. So going back, Dr. Kimberly Grayson, who's our high school principal. And then Omar Montgomery, who's the president of the NAACP and an educator, community advocate, and political expert, amongst other things, who's leading conversations around police and safety and other things that are in education and other things that we are talking about on a national scale. And so that's why sometimes you just got to go to your backyard to have the best conversation. And so hopefully you guys all enjoy what we have. But let's start with Vern. Would you introduce yourself, please, Dr. Howard?
Yes, thank you so much for having us. I'm Vern L. Howard. I am the chairman of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Colorado Holiday Commission, and I have been doing the work on trying to make Dr. King's birthday a holiday in Colorado for 42, we've been doing the work for 42 years now. We started marching before the holiday became a reality. And we have programs commemorating the life and times of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. year round. And we do it with a group of volunteers. And this year, as all of you know, we have introduced the new Dr. Martin Luther King nonviolent curriculum to be taught in public and private schools. So thank you for having us.
Yes. Omar.
Dr. Ross, thank you for the invitation, and it's good to be with our other two guests who are just amazing on so many different levels and have been mentors and fellow educators. Omar Montgomery, president of the Aurora branch of the NAACP, and also Director of Equity, Culture, Community Engagement for Cherry Creek School District and adjunct at the University of Colorado, Denver. I just want to say, when it comes to Black History Month, Dr. Ross, I hear everything that you're saying, but I'm going to say this. This is a time for celebration. And I think each and every year we celebrate it, we open up more minds and we make people more aware about the success and contributions of Black America to America. So thank you.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump right in. So when I think about Black history, Dr. Howard, you're one of the people I think of, right? And not for the history aspect of it, but the action of it, right? When I think about the MLK holiday in Colorado, I can't even think of it without seeing your name, your face. And so with that being said, could you kind of talk about how the holiday came to existence in Colorado? How did we get here? And, and there's tons of places that celebrate it. So how did we get here? But then how did we become, every year to be in the top 2 or 3 largest celebrations in the nation?
Dr. Ross, we only have an hour.
Yeah, you gotta give the Cliff Notes version. You can't close times a day, brother.
Let me start by saying this. In 1986, President Bush said that if we were to give the contributions to Black Americans for the settling of this country and the building of the world, it would turn the world's economics inside out and this country's upside down. And so with that said, Black history is nothing more than American history. Let's talk about the Dr. King holiday. After Dr. King was sacrificed in Memphis, in 1976, the governor put together a commission to build a Dr. Martin Luther King statue in Denver. Denver became only the 2nd or 3rd city in the nation after Dr. King's death to erect a monument. And that statue is now in Pueblo, Colorado. It featured Dr. King with Emmett Till. However, Wellington E. Webb, the Honorable Wellington E. Webb, first introduced legislation to have the Dr. King holiday passed in Colorado. Long story short, Mrs. Webb took it on, and it took her 12 years to get it done. However, we had people from all over the state that supported it, along with a handful of people that, I don't know if this is form to mention their names or not, that said that they would do whatever they could to make sure the holiday never happened in Colorado. So what happened after the law was signed on April 4th of 1984, a representative went to Mrs. Webb and said, we need to have a parade. And Mrs. Webb shook her head and said, no, we have so many issues still that we need to champion. We need to have a march. She says, in fact, we need to have a merraid, a march that means to demonstrate and to protest while we're having a parade, that means to celebrate the things that we have championed, and hence the word parade was born. We have people, Dr. Ross, that come from all over the world to the Dr. King Parade by itself. We generally have somewhere in the neighborhood between 60 and 80,000 people participate in the parade each year, not counting all of the other events that we have. How we became one of the largest in the nation, there's 64 counties in Colorado. We have a Dr. King event in almost all 64 of those counties.
Thank you. And so, and with that, overview, it leads me to ask our final panelist to introduce herself. And wanted to have her introduce herself separately because she is the leader of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. College Prep School here in Denver. And so, Dr. Grayson, I want to kick it to you. Hearing that legacy and knowing the building that you walk in every day, what does this legacy mean to you, and why is Black history and our story so important?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Kimberly Grayson, and I am the principal of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Early College, which is a 6th through 12th grade school in the far Northeast. This is my 26th year in education, and my 15th year as a school leader, and my 9th year at MLK. Black History Month, as we know, is a time to celebrate the accomplishments and the contributions of African Americans. It should go beyond the 44 days, right? It should be year long. It should be, the importance should be year long, and it should span across all curriculum areas. Shouldn't just be from MLK Day through the end of February. But it is a time where we're looking at the contributions and the celebrations of African Americans. You know, this 21st century has allowed the uncoverings of the greatness in our community everywhere. Black History Month has allowed us to be highlighted, assessed, and promoted as we pay respect to those that we're standing on the backs of. But I will say, like, walking through the doors of a school that is named after MLK has provided motivation for my students to increase their student voice to make change happen as well. And hence you'll find the No Justice, No Peace resolution that was passed by the school board October 22nd of last year that states every school in DPS should teach African American history, Black history, Indigenous history, Hispanic history, year long in every content area. And every library in DPS must consist of fiction and nonfiction literature of people of color, and leaders and teachers need to have training on how to teach this history so that they're not focused on the traumatic events that has happened.
Thank you. And Omar, so president of the NAACP, one of the oldest and most esteemed organizations in our community, and then as an educator and running equity service in Cherry Creek schools, what does this legacy mean to you from those multiple hats, and kind of how are you approaching the work?
No, Dr. Ross, that's a great question. I think the work, there's two sides to it. There's one where it's just a part of your everyday life. It's everything you breathe, everything you talk about, how we raise our kids, how we have talks at the dinner table. It's all those different things. I remember, just to get to your question, and I don't know if this was happening in Colorado because I'm originally from Los Angeles. My church every Sunday would talk about how the Bible and Black history was connected. We used to get a calendar every year that had all the different people that we didn't know about and that we didn't study in books. And I would look forward to getting that Black history calendar every single year. So I say that to say that one part of it is a lifestyle, taking that greatness that we know about Black America and walking with your head up high, because you know that the stereotypes that are in the news, the negative depictions of Black people are what they are. Yes, there are some issues in our community. I don't deny that. But at the same time, we've made tremendous accomplishments, and we should always hold our head up high when we're talking about Black America. So when we talk about the genius of Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who in the 1920s said, hey, I want to honor Frederick Douglass and I want to honor Abraham Lincoln as Negro History Week. And then in 1986, where it was federal legislation that said, hey, we're going to recognize it as a month. And then you talk about MLK Week, and then you begin to talk about Juneteenth, and you talk about May, where some people talk about Black Liberation Week or Black Liberation Month in the month of May. Truthfully, and if you want to add Kwanzaa, for those that celebrate Kwanzaa, we are having year-round celebrations about the contributions of Black people if we all were to connect those dots. Yes, Black History Month is recognized, but when you really begin to think about what we celebrate year-round, we're educating the community about what we have contributed to America and the world.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fantastic point. In thinking about contributions and how we celebrate. Dr. Grayson, I wanted to come back to you because, you know, it's one thing to do this and celebrate and do the work as a leader, but you literally have a movement in your building that is being led by young people. No justice, no peace. It's just so phenomenal to watch. And I have to be honest, I checked my email, may have been about 3 weeks ago, and I seen this a beautiful calendar of events. And, you know, February 1st, I had on my black, red, and green, and I didn't have a chance to come up to the school because I was clean. I wanted to show up on y'all, but you've got this calendar of events. And so could you talk a little bit about the journey of No Justice, No Peace, the building, the teachers, and then what you guys are doing this month, which I think is really, really cool.
Absolutely. Yes, my No Justice, No Peace leaders are really leading the way, and they do so humbly, right? And they just sit back and they quietly do the work and maneuver where they see fit to make sure that the work is taking place. And so they had the opportunity to be recognized at the Capitol Friday before the MLK holiday. And then that afternoon, they received an award from the MLK Commission, Dr. Vern. On Monday, on MLK Day, they spoke at the parade. They laid the wreath at the parade, and then together, alongside my school and my drumline and my JROTC, we led the parade, which was great. They are currently working on their next podcast series. It is titled The Color Line of COVID. And the main series is focused on how the pandemic has revealed the true cost of inequities and the impact on marginalized communities of color. And so within that, they have 3 mini series. The first mini series is titled Disrupted Learning. And just within that, they're talking about how they return to school. I'm looking at my notes here because I was helping them earlier today. They're even going into depth, like who's to blame? Who's to blame for our lack of education? And it's interesting because they pose a question: is it better to be segregated and well educated, or integrated and miseducated? And so that's a very deep question, and they're going to spend some time on that question. And then they're going into like unequal educational opportunities with the disparities for special education students, the lack of opportunities for GT students. And then the next episode is called Closed Doors, where they're focused on ACT, SAT, unfair testing preparation, and why it's important that we give to and attend HBCUs. Then they're going directly into For Us, By Us, where they talk more about HBCUs. Then they're going into the Black Excellence Plan that DPS has and why that's so important. And they're going to end with Building for Equity. Then their second mini series is going to be focused on 400 years in the making, trauma and generational trauma, right? And how that's really playing out and impacting us today, students today. And then the third mini series is Double Jeopardy, the impact of bias and racial disparities. And so they're scripting and getting ready to record those. The first board meeting in March, they have been invited to go to the Colorado State board meeting to talk about the importance of why history standards need to be changed. And so we will need lots of support there as we think of proponents of the, folks that are against critical race theory and how they might show up and work against the students. And so I'll make sure, Dr. Ross, that I get you that date and time, because we want to pack the house and make sure the young ladies know that we are in full support for them. Now, right now during Black History Month, we are dressing and representing. Our theme is Walk into Wakanda. And any day that isn't dedicated to a theme, we're asking everyone in the building to wear a shirt that has the inspirational quote that supports Black lives or a significant figure or things of that nature. So I'll just give you an example. The first day was Unity Day, and that meant dress in the colors of the flag. The fourth was, you know how the kids are like, it's the whatever for me. The fourth was, it's the drip for me. Show your Black representation by wearing your Chuck and pearls and your J's and shades. Let's see, I'll give you another one. Last Wednesday was, last Wednesday was, it's the legacy for me. And we told kids to dress in the divine 9 colors. Of course, you can't wear the wording, but you can dress to represent the divine 9. And another fun one was, it's the brilliance for me, dress like hidden figures. And tomorrow it's the crown for me. We're promoting everyone to wear like their natural hair. We're also having a cooking show tomorrow, focusing on soul food. We've had teachers do lessons on soul food, and then we're going to have our trauma social workers and students in the office or in our kitchen actually cooking the soul food. That next Thursday, we're going to have a sip and paint, where we're going to invite the community to come out and we're going to paint and have some mocktails. We're doing a lot of fun stuff every week, but the dress down stuff has been really, really fun with all of our students. In addition, if you walk through our building, you'll see some displays and you'll see like some Black history challenges that our students are participating in.
That's absolutely amazing. And Dr. Howard, it looked like you were getting ready to say something there.
Yes, Dr. Grayson, this is the first she's heard of this. Last Thursday, we had sent a video of the No Justice, No Peace that we recorded there at the school right after the parade about the Dr. King nonviolent curriculum. And we sent that to McGraw-Hill, and as well as to Good of All, the organization Good of All. And 3 things happened with that. One is the New Hampshire School Board got hold of it. And I was in San Francisco last week, and they wanted me to come and speak to them about the Dr. King curriculum based off of watching your students, Dr. Grayson, talk about how wonderful of a program that is and how it would actually unify the community, bringing everyone together and have them. I'm gonna send you the video. I'm gonna send you the link. It's very powerful what the 3 students, and we'll be coming back up to the school to record you and some of the other students as well. And one of the things I did want to mention about the HBCUs, this curriculum has a HBCU component to it. Once we start getting this into the schools, the very first students that take this particular course will be eligible for a scholarship to an HBCU of their choosing through McGraw-Hill. And I believe I spoke to you, Dr. Ross, about that. And I know Dr. Grayson and I have talked, and Omar, I've talked to your secretary, not you. I have to get on your schedule here in the next couple of weeks so we can get that done. So just so you know, this curriculum, it talks about the nonviolent movement that Dr. King led and how he led it. Dr. Ross, if you'll allow me to say something real quick, I want you to think about this for a moment. Those of us who are family men and women, and Dr. Grayson received the first ever Are You Safe Award because of how she kept the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. early college safe during the unrest of the George Floyd murder and then through COVID. And she usually cries when we tell this story. So if she breaks into tears, it's okay, she's all right. However, think about this for a moment. Imagine being at a venue, giving a speech or trying to motivate your team, when you get a phone call in 1956 on the 30th day of January saying that your home has been bombed. And then imagine getting to your home and realizing that the bomb went off in your infant child's bedroom. And then you speak with your wife, and your wife tells the story about how she stopped in your office first to turn off the light and the radio instead of going to the baby's bedroom first, where if she had went to the bedroom first, her and the child would have been killed. And then imagine standing on the front porch of your house that the fire department is putting out the fire on and telling an angry mob that we're going to do this peacefully. We're not going to strike back with violence. You can put away your guns, your bats, your lead pipes, your axes, your knives and everything, and we're going to meet their violence with soul power and love power. Imagine that being the narrative of your life. Well, that was Dr. King. That's exactly Dr. King and what happened. So the curriculum that we're talking about, and the reason why Colorado, Dr. Ryan, has become so deep rooted into the Dr. King movement is because Dr. King had written and spoke over 2 million words. And in those 2 million words, people have found their causes. Think about this. It was at the Parade that a lot of the legislation in Colorado has been passed, from healthcare for all to same-sex unions to medical and recreational marijuana. Think about this. All of you have been there, that every politician, almost every politician in the state, from federal, state, and local levels, come to the Parade. And this is put on by a private organization. We're not funded by any government entity. We're not part of any government entity. We are a private commission. Enough. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Ross.
No, it's good. No, thank you. You know, I mean, sometimes when you have the OGs in the house, you have to sit back and let you drop those jewels and drop that history. It's so important. You know, one of the things that I want to call attention to when it comes to three of you, and it's a blessing that I know all three of you and have the opportunity to engage with you in different capacities. But whether it's being at this past weekend at an NAACP meeting, being presided by President Montgomery, or whether it's walking the buildings announced or unannounced, or partnering with Dr. Grayson in her school building, or Vern, the many different events that the statewide MLK Commission puts on. The one thing that all three of these things have in common is diversity. When I look around, I see Black, white, Asian, you know, it's just an array of people. When I look in the school building in particular, Dr. Grayson, white teachers dressing up and participating in the drip and wearing their colors. And so, you know, that unity and thinking about when we talk about Black history being American history, and everybody being a part of it, right? True inclusion. It seems like the three of you have really figured that out, and you have created opportunities and spaces for not only the folks who are in your immediate circle, but the community at large and even other folks to participate. And so I just want to take a minute and kind of talk about how you're able to do that, because we have educators and people on the phone who are on the online who are working in institutions or in places where they're trying to figure out how to get other people involved and how to keep people engaged. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you develop allyship and community and inclusiveness in the work you do.
Dr. Ross, I would just like to say, first of all, Dr. Grayson, I hope there's a lot of purple and gold worn at the Divine Nine Day. That's all I got to say. I'm sure
it was a bunch of crimson and cream up there.
I'm sure there was a lot of purple and gold, but with that stated, Ryan, Dr. Ross and I probably go back and forth on this all day. But with that stated, we have to also recognize that many of our students today want this knowledge. When I walk in the Smoky Hill High School, when I walk into Cherry Creek High School, Cherokee Trail High School, Eagle Crest, Overland, you see diversity in the celebration. You see diversity in the acknowledgement. And some of that could be attributed to our entertainment industry, where you see that cross alliance in the hip hop movement. We just saw that this Super Bowl weekend, whether you liked it or not, but you saw how many people in the audience, diverse people from other countries, was up partying during the halftime show. And it was Black entertainers who were singing, doing hip hop. And I know some people, have some issues with some of the halftime entertainment, but when you looked at that celebration, you saw diversity. Same thing in our classrooms. Those kids want to know about Black history. They want to know about Hispanic Heritage Month, Asian American Heritage Month. They want to know these things because they know that at times our history books is not sharing every single person contribution. And yes, there's also a movement to say, we don't want this in the classroom for whatever reason, but we have some resilient students, some resilient educators such as Dr. Grayson and other resilient educators who are saying, guess what? We're going to continue with what our state has voted as part of our curriculum, and also what we know is right, so that all of us know the contributions of all our different groups to America and to the world. That is important to dispel all the different stereotypes about different groups. It helps eradicate racism in some aspects where people say, that's not my experience with these individuals, and that's not what I learned.
Yeah, pass it down to you, Dr. Grayson. What are your thoughts?
It's not easy at all, right? But our kids, our students, they are screaming and begging to learn more about them. And I think that when people realize the state that we're in today, the only way that we're going to recover or fix this is with the knowledge and education of who we are as a people and everything that we have brought to this country, um, and everything that we have contributed to it. Like our kids are begging for this. I think the hardest piece of the work is not with the students, it's with the adults, because you have to shift mindsets, right? And I say it all the time, Black excellence is not a hashtag, it's a mindset. And when you think about, I have over 130 faculty members in this building. I got to shift their mindsets in order to be able to teach what my students are asking and begging for. And it shouldn't be that hard, right? It shouldn't be this difficult. But the reality of it is that it really is. And that, you make some enemies because you're asking for change, because people are not used to being uncomfortable. But my kids have been uncomfortable every day of their life, and they will continue to be uncomfortable, right? And so I just know that I have to continue to push for what's right for my kids, and just continue to rely on community to have my back, because these times are very difficult. But if we want to think about the change that needs to be made, like it's within the education and teaching our kids about them.
Dr. Howard?
You know, see, here's the thing about Black history. Here's the most ironic thing right here that people don't understand. Right now, the very forum we're using, the Zoom platform, was invented by a Black man. A tool that we use every single day, or most people use every single day, GPS, was invented by a Black woman. Refrigeration, forced air furnaces were all invented by Black people. See, the thing is that the one that gets me, I think, the most is when we think about George Washington, the father of our nation, and how he crossed the Delaware River on Christmas Eve to sneak up behind behind the British for a sneak attack. They taught us that in school. Well, back in my generation, I don't know about you guys. What they didn't teach us is that in the boat with him was 13 Black freemen. And the 30 boats that he took had somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 Blacks on that boat with him. See, when we talk about Black history, I believe what the challenge is that we put Black in front of it. If we just talk about history and let people then recognize how that history evolved and how it came from Black excellence, that may be the way to get them to understand better the contributions of Black people. And yet, and still, Dr. Grayson is absolutely right. People have been screaming and yelling for, and when I say people, I'm talking about students. You'd be surprised when I talk to folks. I have the pleasure of traveling the country speaking on Black history and Dr. King. And you'd be surprised the number of people, Brother Omar knows this, that are shocked when they find out things that they use or deal with daily came from the minds of a Black genius. Dr. King said in 1966 that we are touched by more Black inventions by the time we leave home in the morning than by any other culture. And we all know that necessity is the mother of invention. We all know that. When we talk these things and we talk about Black history and we look through times in the 400 years, the struggle 400 years, and Dr. Grayson, I intend to be at the school for that one. We too many times have allowed the narrative to be taught by others, while when we talk about punching holes in the darkness, yes, Edison, he may get the credit for inventing the light bulb, but it was the element that made the light bulb work. Alexander Graham Bell may get the credit for inventing the telephone, but it was the transmitter, the transformer, that got the phone from my house to yours, Dr. Ross, invented by a Black man. So when we look at the paradigm shift that Dr. Grayson struggles with her faculty, it's a mindset of how we were all raised. A lot of us were not raised open-minded and to be open to new things and to understand that there were some brilliance out there. You know, when we think of the Tuskegee Airmen, when we think of the Red Wings, you know, how folks didn't even believe that a Black man could fly an airplane, much less lead a squadron of bombers through Germany unmolested, to the point to where they were the requested squadron to our escort to lead, you know, the bomb squadrons. we can go on and go on and go on. And Dr. Ross, this is something that's passionate with me. So forgive me, guys. I can go off on a tangent and stay on one forever. That's why I say an hour. Okay, because I took out 8 hours for this. I figured, we'd have breakfast, lunch, and dinner here.
Oh, that's funny. No, and again, Dr. Howard, appreciate just the insight and the information, right? Because this is stuff that people need to know. And I fundamentally believe in the work that I do every day in the Colorado Community College system when we talk about equity, right? The framework or the approach that I use is thriving, right? Sometimes it's hard to think about equity, and sometimes it's hard to think about the buzzwords, diversity, inclusion, justice, those things. But if you close your eyes, you can picture who's thriving and who's not thriving on your campus or in your building, right? And then the question becomes, what do we do to ensure that everyone is thriving, right? And how do we understand everyone? And how do we take the time to listen to the narrative of people? We find out how much we have in common, or just how we dispel myths just by simply taking the time to actually hear people. And that being said, right, there's conversations about curriculum, right? There's the curriculum that you're implementing in your school, Dr. Grayson, through blackhistory365.com. Dr. Howard, there's the nonviolent curriculum based on the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King that you're looking at. And so my question is when you're thinking about this work, and Omar, we'd love to hear your perspectives as both an adjunct professor and then as someone who has influence at the executive level in the school district. I think it's amazing that the young folks of your school, Dr. Grayson, fought and made this happen. I think it's amazing that folks have come together, Vern, to create this curriculum. But what I have trouble with is why aren't educators doing this anyway, right? The education environment is supposed to be one of the freest environments for expression and thought and dialogue and disagreement and critique and critical thinking. So what's not happening for these types of curriculum to just be commonplace or common sense in the work that we do? And what can folks do from your perspective, and we'll start with you, Omar, to just normalize this conversation so that we can look at holistic, well-rounded, authentic, and true education?
Dr. Ross, this is not a new argument. When Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded the Journal of Negro History that complemented Negro History Week during that time, it was an academic journal. Mm-hmm. And people who know the difference between the magazine articles and the academic journal will know these are articles that are researched and judged by other people in academia. And people had pushed back on that. People had pushed back on the first Black Studies department that was founded in San Francisco State. People have always had pushback when it comes to other groups having their voice be heard in the curriculum, whether if it's in the sciences, whether if it's in other disciplines, where you begin to embed and talk about. When Dr. Vernon Howard was going down all those different inventions, we're talking about physics, we're talking about astronomy, we're talking about electrical engineers, we're talking about mechanical engineers. And sometimes when you're beginning to talk about these curriculums, most people think that we're trying to brainwash people or trying to get them believe a certain political view and things of this nature. That is far from it. We're trying to inspire Black kids, kids of color who are from different nationalities and different ethnic groups. You can be president, you could be that engineer, you could be the one that not only be the first one to go in space, but also build the spaceship. It is about celebrating your accomplishments and what you can do. And for some reason, there are some people who've always been resistant. This is not new. I just got to speaking at a school where the students asked me to come speak, and they're trying to introduce their Afro Student Alliance. That's the name of the organization. And the school is saying, well, that may breed some type of separatism or something of this nature. Well, the separatism start when you're in the curriculum and they don't see themselves and they feel like they have to start an organization like this in the first place. So let's understand that they're going to continue to be those voices, but we have to protect our educators because now they're showing up the school board meetings with armed with guns and things of this nature. People are threatening principals and putting their private addresses out there, as well as superintendents, as well as teachers. We have to protect those educators that are doing what is right by our youth, who are being resilient and are making changes, because these students, when they hear about themselves, they improve academically. They do better in their other classes. And they see themselves being a part of the learning institution and figuring out what their future could be like. Like Dr. Vern Howard, I can go on and on about this, but I'm gonna leave it right there. And maybe when we get to the green room, we can continue that part as well.
So other thoughts, Dr. Grayson, Dr. Howard, just and how do we normalize this conversation? Or now that it's happening, then now that you have your curriculums and you're working on them, what are you doing to normalize the conversations for everyone else, especially for people who might be slow to get on board or apprehensive for whatever reason?
First, I question, why don't we want to teach the truth? And if schools can opt out of teaching Black history, and that's American history, then can my students of color opt out of the other history that's being taught? Right? That would be the exact same thing. Can my students demand that they're taught the history that looks like them, even though they shouldn't have to demand it? It should just happen. When it comes to shifting mindsets, I can tell you my students' podcast has done a lot of that. For some reason, hearing from a leader of color is not as great as hearing from students of color and seeing them and understanding the world through their eyes. And so I think it's twofold that way, right? I'm able to work with my podcast to help them to develop their material, but then they deliver it. And when they deliver it, it's so captivating that why not teach the truth? And so in order to shift mindsets, I've used my students' voices through the podcast. Not only is the podcast released 4:00 in the evenings, but we also watch them during faculty meetings, right? And my staff reflects on what they watched. And I have my podcast students there when it's being shown, so that they can do a Q&A right after. And so they're constantly hearing from students and their voices. And I think that that's what helps to shift a lot of the mindsets here. They don't hear it just from me. They're hearing it from all of my students.
Nothing like putting students first, right? Like one of my favorite statements as an educator, right? Like start with the students in mind in everything that we do. And so thank you for sharing that. Dr. Howard, do you have anything to add there?
See, Dr. Grayson is a true hero because she has taken on literally a quote that Dr. King made, that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands at times of moments of comfort, and I'm paraphrasing here, and convenience, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy. And so Dr. Grayson isn't afraid to take on that challenge, to take on that controversy. See, the thing is, Dr. Ross, to answer your question, the reason why it's not being taught when it's a fundamental part of education is because we're dealing with Homo sapiens. We're dealing with human beings who have their own personal thought processes, who have their own personal beliefs. It's not a matter of whether or not they're being taught the truth. It's not whether or not it goes against the fiber, everything that they've been taught all their lives. All at once becomes a lie to them. that, they were told that Black people or people of color were only good for certain things, and then you produce evidence that showed them otherwise. All at once, they then have to believe in themselves. Wait, did mom and dad lie to me? Did my favorite teacher lie to me all these years? And we don't want to believe that someone that we love, trust, and believe in would feed us a lot of falsehoods. And so it's hard to grasp that reality. And Dr. Grayson has hit the nail on the head, because Dr. Grayson, like I said, it was through the video of your students that the New Hampshire School Board was like, whoa, wait a minute. Now we're hearing it from the very people who need to learn it, the very people who, this is for a brand new generation. And so Dr. Ross, that's the reason. Once again, I'm gonna stop there, because this is something that is so passionate to us, because those of us who are educators, those of us who are community workers, those of us who stand for something more and want to see true change, it's like Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. And that is what we're not seeing in a lot of our school districts and a lot of our educators.
So, I mean, this has been such a great conversation, and we're almost running out of time. And so, a real important part of this conversation is what happens when you do the work, right? We all know that we shouldn't have to work so hard to do the work, but we do. And sometimes with that comes challenge. That being said, taking care of yourself, dealing with the frustrations and the tough times and dark moments is something that is important. So, in your final thoughts, would you just kind of talk a little bit about what it is you do to take care of yourself, and to keep yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically intact to be able to show up every day the way that you guys do? And you can jump in any order.
I just say I love waking up every morning with a smile on my face. And for those who know me, I ask you, how are they treating you? And the reason why I ask that question is because if they're treating you bad, I want to do all I can to put a smile on your face and to let you know it's going to be all right. And yes, there's always some people that are coming out there trying to attack us and trying to say what we're doing is not right. But at the same time, I have the spirit of the ancestors behind my back and behind all of our backs. And my faith, family, all those things lift me up. If I could wake up and see them every morning like I do, I am in good spirits. That's the basic foundation I need to be mental and emotionally healthy. And the theme for Black History Month this year is health and wellness. And that's something we must take seriously. So thank you.
Let's go to you, Dr. Howard, and give the final words to Dr. Grayson.
To use the words of Charlie Pride, you got to kiss an angel good morning. And that's what I do. I have a very beautiful wife and family, much like Brother Omar had mentioned. And that keeps me grounded. It keeps me focused on what I need to do. And those of you who know me know I don't like flying, so I drive everywhere. And driving opens up my mind. I'm a photographer and a videographer, so I'm able to just capture the brilliance of God's wonderful world, through landscape or through people or whatever the case may be. And believe it or not, I promise you, there are times when I feel like I can't go on anymore. And then somebody will call me, Brother Omar will call me and say, hey, Vern, I have a new challenge for you. Or Dr. Grayson will call and say, Vern, we have this. And all at once I'm rejuvenated, ready to go again. And so that's how I stay healthy and keeping myself grounded.
Dr. Grayson.
I would say I have not always been good at taking care of myself. I've always put my students and my school and my community before me. But very quickly this year, I learned that I have a 12-year-old, right? And I'm the only mother that she will have. And I have to take care of myself to be there for my own kids. I have a 12-year-old and I have a 21-year-old, much of which I think I've lost. You know, I wasn't there for my 21-year-old son like I should have been because I was so ingrained in the work at MLK, and I refused to do that to my daughter. And just here recently, my mother, um, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's, has relocated to Denver, and I am her caregiver. And so I wake up in the morning every day excited to take care of my mom. Like, that life cycle has changed, and I'm honored that she trusts me enough to move from Wichita to Denver so that I can wake up every morning and help get her, help make her better. And so I would say my own children, my mother, and then just the joy that I get when I walk through the doors of MLK seeing my students. In addition to working out 5 times a week now. Let me just say that.
In that gym. Well,
Yeah.
that's what's up. Well, I want to thank you guys for spending time with us. One of the, I believe one of the truest characteristics of a leader is the vulnerability to share. And so thank you for sharing your thoughts, your experiences, your highs, your lows with us today. It's just tremendous. And I want to thank everybody who's in the community here who tuned in for this really important conversation today. And as always, want to thank Global Minded, KPMG, and the other sponsors who allow us to do this work. And shout out to the Colorado Community College System Equity and Inclusion Council team and our Chancellor, Joe Garcia, who has made space for me to do this work and not only share the work that we're doing in our system, but share that work nationally through our partnership with Global Minded. So thank you all for tuning in, and stay tuned for Carol, who may have some closing remarks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And that was an incredible session. And I want to just mention that at Global Minded in June, we will have students on the majority of panels. So there will be at least one student on almost every single panel. So I want to make sure that we can connect with Omar and Vern and all the incredible people that Kimberly works with who have been on Ryan's show in the past, and that we can have the great things people are doing here in Denver and Colorado on that national and global stage, June 22, 23, 24. So we'll look forward to that. And our long-term vision is we really want Denver to be the epicenter for inclusivity and to really be able to be the place where we show everyone how to deal with the really courageous conversations that Ryan has here every month, to be able to heal, to knit together bigger and better strategies, because we have wider circles, more people at the table, and we can raise that consciousness in really authentic and truthful ways. So thanks to all of you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you for Ryan sessions next month. And then I want to also share that tomorrow our K-12 equity team, led by Dr. Paul Miller, will be on why we need more educators of color, because you can't be it if you don't see it yourself. And so we'll have some remarkable African-American leaders speaking about that topic. And then the next day, on the 17th, we'll have building the talent pipeline for more Black students to succeed in STEM. So looking forward to having you all for that if you have time. And then in our newsletter tomorrow, we'll have the recording of this link for you to share with your networks. And we hope that we can just continue to build awareness through the inclusive success networks that we all have. So thanks to all of you, and enjoy the rest of Black History Month. We're doing a number of profiles of incredible people in the newsletter every day. If you don't get our newsletter, you can sign up at www.globalminded.org. Thanks again, Dr. Ross, and everybody today. It was really a wonderful session, as usual. Take good care.
All right, everyone. Have a great day and happy Black History Month. And remember, keep the work going after the 28th. All right, y'all.
Absolutely. All year, every day.
Every day.